Valley of the Sun Audio Video presents Predestined Love by Dick Sutphen. Chapter 1. You were born again to be together. If you were born again to be together, why are you now divorced and remarried to someone else? The radio talk show host asked. His voice was courteous but patronizing. I can't answer that with a simple statement, I replied. Why not? You've written books about reincarnation and how people are destined to be together. Doesn't your own divorce disprove your theory? He sat back in his chair, smiling slyly, and took a long drag on his cigarette. A microphone sat on the desk in front of me, an open line to over 100,000 Los Angeles listeners. To be destined to be together doesn't necessarily mean you are destined to be together for an entire lifetime. Relationships can also be destined to end. A couple can be drawn together for... Oh, come on, Richard, he interrupted. Isn't all this just a slick rationale to justify your attractions and failures? How do you respond to someone who wants simplistic answers to complex questions? My talk show host makes his living playing devil's advocate to authors, politicians, psychics, or whoever else the station programmer schedules to be interviewed. I've been asked the same questions in interviews all over the country by hosts who think of reincarnation as cosmic foo-foo to bolster their ratings. Let me briefly explain about soulmates, and hear me out if you will, I said. My voice was insistent. A soulmate relationship is simply a love that is destined to be, and it always fits into three basic categories. 1. Karmic companions are two people destined to form a union to confront unlearned lessons from past lives. In other words, conflict is destined as a self-test to see if the principles have learned to let go of fear and respond with unconditional love. Now, when I say unconditional love, I don't mean romantic love. I'm talking about acceptance of others without expectations, judgment, or blame. These relationships can be karmically structured in one of three ways. A. Locked in. The players must remain together to resolve their conflicts. Or B. Open-ended. The outcome of the relationship depends upon the growth of the partners. If love matures, they will remain together. But if stagnation destroys the potential for spiritual growth, a parting is assured. And C, destined to end for the growth opportunity the parting provides. Can the two people let go with love, without excessive hostility, anger, and desire for revenge? If not, another mating in a future life is assured. Well, what if one partner learns his lessons in this life and the other does not? Asked my host. His eyes shifted from his notes to me. The one who learned will not need to come back with the other soul again. The soul still in need of awareness will be paired in the future with another whose karmic configurations matches his own. Whatever the reasons for the ending, for those who are willing to risk, a new, destined relationship probably awaits. Everything that has ever happened in the lives of both people prior to the initial meeting has prepared them for each other. They will have similar karmic needs, and the new relationship will allow them to continue to learn what they need to learn. Okay, Richard, what's the second kind of soulmate? Dharmic bond soulmates share a goal. Everything I said about karmic companions also applies here. But the couple comes together combining their energy to accomplish a joint task. At the point the shared goal is launched, established, or complete, the couple will have fulfilled their duty to themselves and each other. From then on, their future together depends upon how they have karmically structured the relationship. It can be locked in, open-ended, or destined to end. What is Dharma? Asked the talk show host as he poured 2 cups of black coffee, passing one over to me. For a moment I thought I might even have him interested. Dharma is your duty to yourself and society. Karma conditions you through all your experiences to create the character required to fulfill your Dharma. He looked at me as if I were speaking Chinese, but He didn't interrupt, so I continued with my explanations of the third kind of soulmate relationship. Counterpart soulmates experience a loving, supportive relationship in which the partners share their lives with each other without conflict. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't have problems. It is just that the problems will not be with each other. Most likely, they will have shared a long lineage of prerequisite lifetimes, and I feel that both people will have attained very close or matching vibrational rates. In other words, they harmonize with each other, and the relationship is a karmic reward that will usually last for a lifetime, and maybe into future lifetimes if they will it to be. Does predestined love always mean a soulmate relationship? Asked the host. Not in the context of being lovers, I replied. Children, family members, and important friends are also predestined. The remainder of the hour was filled with listener call-ins. Each caller wanted me to respond to his relationship situation. Every phone line was tied up with callers awaiting their turn. The show host had asked that I answer the questions as quickly as possible so more people could be answered rather than dealing in depth with just a few. This allowed me to make a philosophical point or two, but certainly didn't serve the listeners. I left the station frustrated, as I had many times before in other programs in other cities. After doing over 400 radio and TV interview shows, I know it's impossible to win them all. I'm going to write a book about this, I promised myself as I got into my car and drove back to my home in Malibu. In the weeks that followed, I began to assemble my research on the subject of predestined love. In the 10 years since I wrote You Were Born Again to Be Together and other metaphysical titles for pocketbooks, I've conducted metaphysical self-help seminars in approximately 24 cities per year. 75,000 people have attended these gatherings, which run from 1 evening to 7 days. The participants come in search of themselves, their earthly purpose, and a greater awareness of their human potential. At the end of each seminar, I ask the attendees to write me about their experiences, any follow-up verification they obtain, and related experiences. The request generates an incredible amount of mail. Some of the most interesting cases are followed up with phone calls in which I ask for additional information. In some situations, I arrange to work with the individuals using metaphysical investigative techniques such as past life regression, automatic writing, and psychometry. Rather than merely reprint letters and explain the situation in typical nonfiction fashion, I have chosen to dramatize the case histories in this volume based upon what I've been told and upon my follow-up interviews, investigations, and experiences. This is a different approach to a New Age book, similar to a television docudrama. The technique results in rapid reading and easy assimilation of sometimes complicated metaphysical concepts. My goal is communication pointing to liberation of the self and from the self. Each case is based upon actual situations. Only a few of the names have been changed to protect the identity of the subjects. Walk in peace, balance, and harmony. Dick Sutphen, Malibu, California, June 1987. Chapter 2, Deborah Wakefield's False Guilt Karma. Desperation drove Deborah Wakefield to attend the 1979 reunion of her biological mother's family. At age 31, it would be the first time she had seen her relatives in 28 years. The gathering was to be held Sunday afternoon at Aunt Rosie Hart's near Madras, Oregon. 18 aunts, uncles, cousins, and their families would be attending from all over the Pacific Northwest. Deborah turned left off Highway 97 at the White Steepled Church onto a deeply rutted dirt road that wound past small family farms. The note containing the hastily written instructions bounced on her lap as she fought to keep the Nova out of the ruts. Right turn at Miller Road. One farmhouse looked like the next, and all in need of paint and repairs. The windows were tall and thin, reminiscent of another era. Each faded frontage was topped by a small attic window, which she noticed uneasily. Rosie's home was a duplicate of all the others she had passed since leaving the highway. Children were playing in the yard. Cars filled the drive, overflowing into a neat line running along the edge of the road. Deborah emerged from her car, straightened the formal blue suit she had picked for the occasion, and gathered her composure around her like a fragile shell. No one knew her until she explained who she was. Then they spoke warm, friendly words, while their faces wore masks of uneasy compassion. They carefully pretended not to look at her hands. She noticed the whispering when her back was turned, but she didn't care. The small talk was painful but necessary. There was enough food in the buffet to feed an army. Finally, she was alone with Rosie. "Aunt Rosie, can you tell me about my mother's death?" Deborah asked. She spoke with a quiet but desperate firmness. "There isn't much to tell, child," Rosie explained. Her eyebrows drew together in an agonized expression. "You were about 1.5 when she went into the hospital. She told me at the time she had no intention of ever coming out. She hated your father so much she didn't want to live anymore. The medical reports showed nothing was physically wrong, but she complained so much of abdominal pains they performed exploratory surgery. She died of complications from the surgery because it was the only way she could die." Deborah's face was grim. She stared at the worn patterns in the living room rug. "Do you remember your father at all?" Rosie asked, her voice betraying a critical tone. Deborah shook her head. "Not really. Only flashes in therapy." "Therapy?" "I seem to have blocked all memories of my early childhood, Aunt Rosie." Deborah shrugged her shoulders. She was kneading one hand with the other. "All my life I felt bone cold, and I've ached right here." She drew her hands tightly against her stomach. "I joined a personal growth Gestalt therapy class a few months ago, and terrible things started surfacing in the group processes. I don't know if they're real or imagined, and they're driving me crazy. I decided to make contact with my real family again." "What terrible things?" Rosie asked, tension noticeable in her voice. "I relived a situation. I must have been about 2 years old, and I was sitting in the living room holding my kitten. I guess my father called me, but I didn't hear him. And in rage, he came up behind me, and he grabbed the kitten, and he pulled out his knife, and he cut its head off. And he threw the body in my lap, and the head was lying on the floor, its eyes staring up at me, and I started to scream, and there was blood everywhere. And then he wiped the bloody knife across my face, yelling, 'You love the kitten more than you love me. It's your fault it's dead. And it's your fault your mother's dead.'" Deborah was shaking, and the words seemed to wedge in her throat. "Oh, my child, oh, my God." Rosie held both hands to her mouth. She took a few steps to the couch and sat down. Deborah stood motionless in the middle of the room, looking down at her aunt. In the background, she could hear the drone of conversation from the front porch. A cousin walked through the living room on her way to the kitchen. "It's true, Deborah. Your brother Tommy talked about it at the trial. You must realize, to your mother's side of the family, your father was a monster." "Then why didn't they put him away?" She spat out the words contemptuously. Rosie hesitated, nodding slowly. "Do you remember what happened just before the state took you away from him?" "I've heard the story, but you tell me what you know." She was kneading her hands once more. "Your father locked you and Tommy in the attic. After 24 hours without water, you became very ill. Tommy broke out to run for help, but Mr. Kloss, as your father demanded to be called, caught him. He grabbed a rope, tied it around Tommy's neck, and hung him from the overhang of the house. Now, neighbors saw what was happening, and they came running to Tommy's rescue. They were just in time. A few more minutes, and your brother would surely have died. They called the police. Tommy was taken to the hospital, and you and your sister were taken to foster homes, which were no better," Deborah snapped. "Child, after your mother died, Mr. Kloss cut off all contact with our side of the family. We didn't know about any of this until the trial years later. But then the Wakefield family was legally fighting to adopt you. We just didn't know. On the drive back to Portland, the broken yellow line down the center of the highway flashed hypnotically in Deborah's peripheral vision. Flick, flick, flick. She shook her head to clear it, attempting to fit the pieces of new knowledge into the puzzle of her life. Flick, flick, flick. She was back in the personal growth Gestalt class, lying on the floor with her eyes closed, crying. "Go to your level. Go where it hurts," said the soft voice of her instructor. Can't, screamed the 2-year-old in her mind. Yes, you can, Deborah. Bring in someone you can trust. There's no one to trust. Deborah's voice hardened. No single person you know? No. Can you trust God? No. What about Jesus? Can you trust Jesus? She didn't answer. Deborah, can't you trust Jesus? Yes, I think so. Then will you let Jesus help you examine your childhood? Yes. All right. Go where it hurts. Hands hurt. Hands hurt. She began sobbing in wretched, tormented sobs. What's happening, Deborah? Speak up and tell me what's happening. She's putting my hands in the washer. The blood-curdling cry erupted from the depths of Deborah's throat, awakening the other 4 students in the class. They sat up, their anxiety expressed by the protective body language. In a calm voice, the instructor asked, "You mean someone is putting your hands in the wringer of a washing machine?" Oh. The childish voice of consciously forgotten anguish did not seem to belong to the beautiful adult woman writhing on the floor. Who did this? Oh. Further attempts to obtain information were unsuccessful. Deborah's only response was sobs and an anguished, hands hurt. Okay, breathe in the relaxation once again, Deborah. You will awaken calm and relaxed, remembering everything that you've just experienced on the count of 5. Can you talk about it? The instructor asked, after providing a box of tissues and a glass of water. The other students, forming a semicircle on the floor, leaned closer to catch every word. The only sound in the room was Deborah's sniffled breathing. Oh, God, she said weakly, pausing to drink and rub her swollen eyes. I've been told about what happened, but until now I had no memory of it. Her voice was choked and raw, and the words seemed strange on her tongue. After I was taken away from my father, I was placed in foster homes. At the age of 2.5, someone, presumably my foster mother, ran my hands through the wringer of an old-fashioned washing machine and left me hanging by my bleeding hands over the edge of the washer. Deborah limply lifted her hands as if a puppeteer had raised 2 strings. The terrible scars ran halfway up her forearms. Multicolored, mangled flesh had subsequently healed into abstract patterns of pain. The other students stared, then looked away. The instructor, seated on the floor beside Deborah, had knotted her right hand into a fist, what she was pressing against her own mouth as if to quell the feelings arising within. Deborah took a slow, audible breath. Her eyes were cold and passionless as she continued. Another foster child, a 5-year-old boy, heard my moans and helped me get down. He wrapped the wounds in dirty handkerchiefs. The foster parents were gone. We'd been abandoned in this ramshackle house. What happened? Asked a woman in her mid-20s, clasping her knees tightly to her chest. Deborah looked down at her hands. She unconsciously kneaded one with the other and spoke almost mechanically now. I was told for the first time in 20 years a state social worker drove home a different way. And passing our house, she saw what appeared to be a child in distress and stopped to check. I was walking back and forth on the front steps saying, "Hands hurt, hands hurt." I held them up to the woman. Gangrene was setting in. She rushed me to the hospital. The tears slowly formed in the corner of Deborah's eyes and listlessly trailed down her cheeks as the instructor put her arms around Deborah. She collapsed, sobs racking her body. "It's all right, Deborah. You're processing through the pain, and it's going to be better now." "Are you sure?" "The pain has to come out. I want you to finish the story." The instructor spoke in a soft, reassuring tone with rhythmic pacing. "You have the strength. You have the strength. You have the strength." Deborah lay limply in her instructor's arm until the sobbing abated. As she sat up, her eyes met those of the other students, who smiled encouragingly. "Can you finish the story, Deborah?" She nodded. "The doctors at the hospital wanted to amputate my arms. But one surgeon had recently studied new medical procedures. He'd even taken home a severed arm to study how to save others in the future. He saved my arms." Donnelly Wakefield was at the Salem hospital that night, awaiting her husband, a doctor on staff. When I was released, she took me home to her family of 3 daughters. I'm told she held and rocked me for hours at a time, whispering, "No one will ever hurt you again." "So the Wakefields adopted you?" "No, not right away. The laws were very difficult at the time. In those days, biological parents had all the rights, no matter what they did to their children. A few years later, my father, Mr. Claus, wanted me back. At that time, the Wakefields could fight him in court. My new mom says our attorney was light years ahead of his time, and he won a judgment that set new precedents for the rights of abused children in the state of Oregon. Mr. Claus's attorney ended up being disbarred for the way he conducted himself. The court ordered my father never to contact me again. He never did." "Where is he today?" asked one of the students. "I've heard he's running a business in Southern California. It's all I want to know." The headlights of the oncoming vehicle flashed high and low, jolting Deborah back into her present reality. She snapped her lights to low beam and straightened her cramped, stiff body in the seat. The white letters on the roadside flashed past on the right. Portland, 25 miles. "Portland is a boring city," Robert had said. Was that 6 years ago? No, 7. "You've got a boring job in a boring city, and you're the most screwed up woman I've ever seen, but I love you anyway." He was a classmate in her graduating class at the University of Hawaii, and he had followed her from the islands to Portland. "Why do you think I attended so many colleges?" she asked him. "I don't know." "I changed colleges every time a man proposed to me. It was the easiest way to respond by quietly disappearing." "As the prettiest girl on campus, you had to expect a few of us men to fall in love with you," Robert laughed. They were in a restaurant when Robert formally proposed marriage, placing an open jeweler's box containing a ring on the table before her. Deborah set her drink down. She looked at the diamond reflecting the dancing candlelight as she grasped the edge of the table with both hands. Her mouth was tight and grim. Unspoken pain reflected in her cool blue eyes, now ablaze with emotion. Her knuckles were white and her body trembled. "Deborah, I love you," he said, gently placing his hand upon her shoulder. "Don't you understand? I really love—" "No!" Her voice was a hysterical growl. "No!" Raw, primitive emotion exploded, shattering the romantic atmosphere of the restaurant. The other patrons turned to see her push the table forward with all her strength. It tipped. Glasses shattered. "No!" She was standing now, her head to one side, shaking convulsively, floundering blindly in her agony. Has it really been 7 years since that night? Deborah thought as the lights of Portland appeared on the horizon. Poor Robert. I didn't understand it any better than he did until today. Until Aunt Rosie showed me the picture of Mr. Claus. Amazing. He looked almost exactly like Robert. 1980, 1981. While offering little of therapeutic value, the Gestalt class convinced Deborah that she needed professional help. A special Dale Carnegie course for adults abused in childhood proved to be of value in dealing with the intense anger still locked inside. Her first real therapy was with a counselor at the Unity Guidance Center. After 3 months, she started to come out of the oppressive mental turmoil, but was unable to resolve the desolate coldness and the painful feeling of impending catastrophe in the pit of her stomach. 1982. "Something has to happen, God," Deborah said aloud during meditation. "It can't go on like this. Please, something has to happen." In the following day's mail was a magazine containing an advertisement for a Know Thy Higher Self Sutphen seminar to be held in Maui, Hawaii, April 19 through 25. Goosebumps ran up and down Deborah's arms as she read the copy. Hawaiian 7-day getaway, including an All You Were Capable of Being seminar. A small group of people will spend a week renewing body, mind, and spirit on a beautiful beach at Kaanapali in Maui, Hawaii. Past life therapist Dick Sutphen will direct the 20-hour seminar. Explore the past life and present life cause of conflicts in your life and examine your potential to become all you were capable of being. Participants will learn several metaphysical techniques for self-exploration, which they will be able to use for the rest of their lives. Let Kaanapali Beach become a point of departure for your spirit. To walk on a morning along the beach in the long shadows of the West Maui Mountains is to be conscious of the process of renewal and reawakening that is at work within the soul. "I got goosebumps when I read the ad," Deborah explained to her sister Joy. "To me, goosebumps are always an affirmation of truth. If you went too, it would cut the expense to the point where I might be able to afford it." "I wish I could, Deborah, but there's no way. And I really doubt that you could get off work for a week," Joy replied reluctantly. That night, Deborah carried her problem into meditation. "Okay, God, if this is what you'd like me to do, then you're going to have to do it, because I know they won't let me off work, and even if they did, I can't afford it." Before the week was out, Joy called. "Deborah, do you still want to go to Hawaii? I can get off, and I've even come up with some extra money." "I don't believe it," Deborah stammered. "This morning, my boss told me I could have the time off if I still wanted it." Maui, Hawaii. In the second session of the All You Were Capable of Being seminar, the participants were taught automatic writing. As I'm sure every one of you in this room is aware, automatic writing is a channeling technique in which you allow another entity, or your own higher self, to express through your hands. The secret to successful automatic writing is self-trust. You must mentally let go enough to allow awareness to be channeled through your hand. Now, I'll be inducing an altered state of consciousness to make this easier. In the first exercise, I want you to allow a character of wisdom to express something that would be of value for you to know about at this time. "What if an earthbound or low-level entity comes through?" asked one of the participants. At the beginning of the exercise, I'll be directing an intense white light protection. Since we cannot be influenced by unseen entities with vibrational rates lower than our own, most metaphysical people certainly don't need protection. But if your aura has been weakened by drug taking or excess alcohol or illness, or maybe because you're extremely negative, hateful, or maybe because of depression, your vibrational rate can be temporarily reduced. So, even if your natural protection is down, I bring it back up while I'm working with you to assure that you receive only accurate perceptions. An earthbound entity can influence you as easily while you are fully conscious as while you're in an altered state. "Can we ask questions of whomever is writing through our hands?" asked another participant. "Yes, I wouldn't interrupt the flow of writing, but if it seems appropriate, you can take control of your pen and write out the question, or some people prefer to mentally ask and then await the writing to begin again." Dick went on to explain the process of automatic writing. Deborah easily followed the body relaxation and mentally participated in the protective ritual. Draw down a beam of shimmering, iridescent, bright white God light and feel it enter the crown chakra of spirituality on the top of your head. This is a universal light of life energy, and you create a channel for the light with the unlimited power of your mind. Feel the light begin to flow through your body and mind, and imagine it concentrating around your heart area. And now perceive the light emerging from your heart area to surround your body and mind with a protective aura of bright white God light. And you are totally protected. Only your own guides and masters or highly evolved and loving entities who mean you well will be able to influence you in any way. We ask it, we beseech it, we mark it, and so it is. Deborah could feel her body becoming lighter and lighter as she flowed along with the suggestions to ascend into higher self. Ascending, transcending, crossing over. She felt that she was floating as the final instructions filled her mind. On the count of 3, a very wise soul will channel through your hand. 1, 2, 3. Deborah's hand twitched, then stopped. She held the soft-pointed pen loosely and looked at the paper through distanced, dull eyes. She was there in the room with the others, but she wasn't. The music sounded like celestial harmonies, angels humming in her ear as she walked an endless white sand beach. "Hello, my child." Her hand moved, forming words, very different from her own feminine script. "We are pleased that you have returned. We have always guided you along the way." The pen stopped. She waited. Nothing. "How can I be sure this is real?" she wrote. "How can you be sure that it is not?" Her hand responded. "You seek our assistance, but it must come from within you. You want to experience the fullness and richness of life. Who is speaking to me? My name is Samuel. Why isn't my life going anywhere? It is. You just don't recognize the path. Remember the story about the little boy who wants to be a doctor? He must first grow up and do many things to prepare himself for the role. You too are preparing for a role, but it is still best that you don't know. You must discover your own path, or it will not be valid for you. You've worked very hard, and we are proud of the work you are doing." This is stupid. See? You do not accept. Remember how hard you have been working on acceptance. You have made great strides, but you still have a way to go. We are here on the other side guiding you along each step of the way. Although you may not consciously realize it, you have been listening well. Awareness is forthcoming, our child. You said, "my child," at the beginning. There are many of us with you. But you're the one who has talked to me. You will meet more of us soon. You haven't given me any answers. Yes, we have, if you choose to find them. The exercise is about over. We love you. Upon awakening, Deborah reread the automatic writing and shook her head. She listened quietly as some of the participants shared what they received. "I don't know if I can accept it," she said to Joy over lunch. The restaurant was outside overlooking the beach. Gently blowing palm trees cast lazy shadows across the table. Beyond the sunbathers, sleek bodies glistening with suntan oil, was the hotel sailboat concession. Deborah smiled at the novice sailors attempting unsuccessfully to launch a sunfish sailboat into the surf. "Do you think you made it up?" Joy asked. "I don't know, Joy. If I did, it seems to me I could have made up something a bit more interesting. My hand certainly seemed to have a mind of its own, but it almost seems too easy." "Deborah, you've never been one to accept easy answers." Deborah's face spread into a wide grin. "Thanks a lot." "The first session after lunch is going to be an automatic writing dialogue with our body. That ought to be interesting," Joy said, squeezing a roll of excess weight around her middle. I'm going to ask why I'm having herpes flare-ups this week. Deborah's voice was a whisper to avoid being overheard by the people at surrounding tables. Better ask why you caught it in the first place. As little as you've had to do with men, it's almost ironic, Joy whispered back. It's men in general, Joy. I have wonderful karma with men, or haven't you noticed? There was ice in her husky whisper. In the afternoon automatic writing session, on the count of 3, Deborah's hand moved quickly. No, your herpes outbreak is not from the sun or the class. We are... Who's we? Why, yourselves, of course. We are having to make some chemical changes in your body due to your changing beliefs. As you slowly let go of your anger relating from your childhood, we must begin functioning on a new basis. Then you will feel confident, strong, and healthy. We are pleased that you treat us fairly. We're sorry to have made you uncomfortable, but the herpes will be gone in 2 days. And thank you for giving us permission to teach you what serves us and you. May we suggest more vitamin C. Also, take L-lysine and other medicine that you're already using. Stop eating so much oil. We know you're concerned about your fingernails. Take more calcium, zinc, and magnesium 3 times a day. And bless them. Your hands are beautiful. They have done no wrong that you should continue to punish them and think them evil. Your hands are kind and loving and gentle. They will assist you to accomplish your dreams if you will love them. Why so much on my hands? What about my legs? Your legs are hardest to change because you hang on to your belief about their present shape so strongly. The final automatic writing session of the afternoon was to focus upon each participant's earthly purpose. The trance levels seemed deeper to Deborah as she attempted to hold on to the soft edge of reality, ascending into higher self. Again, her pen began writing immediately on the count of 3. You don't really want to know your purpose because you are afraid of your feelings. The purpose of everyone on earth is to resolve fear and express unjudgmental love. But you think if you don't know what your fears are, they will go away. This is not true. Until you understand your fears, you will continue to punish yourself. Your fears are all based upon guilt you experience from your past. It is time to love yourself, to forgive yourself, and to stop punishing yourself for something you didn't do. What do you mean, punish myself? You and you alone are responsible for your experiences. Your beliefs generate your thoughts and emotions, which form your reality. But I've done everything I can think of to help myself. What more can I do? You respond to yourself like a mean, shriveled-up old lady. You have no rights. You don't deserve any rights. You are evil and bad and should be punished. This is not you, but since you believe it to be, it is. You cannot accept that others could care for you. Even when you try very hard to accept or believe the loving words and gestures, the old lady in you will have none of it. She will always find a way to create negativity in the relationship. On another level of mind, you knew James had herpes. The only reason you made love to him was to contact the disease and further punish yourself. I don't understand any of this. What can I do? You can give her back her hands. She loved and expressed love through her hands. You were just using Romando, and she really loved him. But you were so jealous that you wouldn't let another woman have him. You have carried her hate with you for lifetimes. Give her back her hands. What are you talking about? The exercise is over. He awakens you now. We love you, our child. The last half hour of the afternoon was spent having the participants read their automatic writing. I responded with encouragement or attempted to provide karmic interpretations of the information from the other side. Deborah raised her hand to share, and I pointed to her. She was an attractive woman of 33 with cinnamon-colored hair. I wondered why she was dressed so formally in Hawaii. This is really weird, she began. After reading the automatic writing, she said, What does it mean, give her back her hands? Where did that come from? I just can't accept this as anything but babbling. Admitting I didn't have the answers, I suggested she volunteer to be the subject of the first individual regression the following afternoon. I want to conduct some individual, in-depth past life regression sessions. It sounds like the message may relate back to a previous incarnation, Deborah. She agreed, and I told her to bring her tape recorder to record the session. A Hawaiian dinner show was the evening's entertainment, and Deborah and her sister sat far off to the side of the proceedings. In an effort to be a good host, I stopped by their table to ask how they were doing. Everyone else in the room was dressed for the hot night, but Deborah was wearing a sport coat over a high-necked blouse. As she raised her drink to her lips, I noticed the terrible scars on her hands and wrists. "Is this your first visit to Hawaii?" I asked. "Oh, no. I went to school here," Deborah replied. "Your seminar was just a great excuse to come back for a visit." She paused. "Richard, do you really think my automatic writing could be real?" There was a hopeful glint in her eye. "I don't think all automatic writing is pure," I said carefully. "Pure." When someone channels, verbally or through automatic writing, there's often a scrambling of their own awareness and that of the source. Rather than concerning yourself about the validity of the contact, I would judge the accuracy by the advice itself, by the results. "But you think the source is another entity, someone in spirit?" There was now an eagerness in her voice. "You mean, do I think it's possible? I don't think it, I know it, based upon my own experience and the experiences of thousands of seminar participants. You can be in contact with your own higher self, the eternal energy of a discarnate entity, or your own guides and masters. Automatic writing's my favorite technique to convert the skeptical. You saw Johnson in the session this afternoon. The only reason that he's with us is to humor Patty. He's so in love that he's willing to escort her to a nutcake seminar, to quote him. But after the last session, his belief system is in tatters. He was so successful at automatic writing that he has to fit the experience into his old ideas about existence. Naturally, the pieces aren't going to fit together. So he'll either have to deny his experience or change his ideas about the meaning of life." "He won't deny his experience," Joy said flatly. "Of course not," I agreed. So another New Ager is added to the fold. "Richard, in the first exercise, my wisdom character was named Samuel. He said he and a group help and guide me in my life. I didn't think you have more than one spirit guide," Deborah said questioningly. "You have one primary guide, but you can have others who back him up. My guide's an Indian woman named Nita, but in my meditations I have the sense of an entire tribe of people offering supportive energy and protection." "Ruth Montgomery uses automatic writing to create her books," Joy inserted. "Are Lily and the group of 12 or so all her guides?" "That's how I understand it," I said. "And my son Travis is also somehow related to that group energy. Ruth was receiving automatic writing about him before he was born."